All right, well, this is Two Mats One Market. My name is Matthew Kemps. I'm the co-founder of Lone Wolf Realty Group at eXp Realty. And we have...
Matt Kirschling with Gold Star Mortgage.
And our guest?
Sean Fuentes with EXP.
Again, this is Two Mats One Market.
So, Sean, first thing we got to do is get that mic a little bit closer to you. There we go.
Sean Fuentes.
Bingo.
See, you hear that difference? I want to get the bass in your voice.
Yes.
This is the first time you ever been on a podcast?
One that's being filmed, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, not totally. It is not. I do somebody else invited me on their podcast, but it's sports related. So every Monday-ish we do a podcast, but it's live, so it's not recorded. It's just like whatever happens.
What kind of sports are we talking about? All of
this
the above?
This is Las Vegas Raiders football. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been a Raider fan since '83.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of been since then.
The Legion of Doom?
Yeah, well, that's the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, that's right. The Legion of Boom.
Yes.
What do they call it? The Raiders have something.
The Black Hole.
The Black Hole.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking about.
One of the bigger ones. But it's fun. You just get to, because, I was talking to a friend who's a Browns fan. And I was like, these guys are always,
That's where I'm from. Yeah.
And
Browns
he's like,
fan.
these guys are talking about things. I'm like, well, we talk about why would we dump our center? And I'm like, why would we create a hole on the offensive line where it doesn't need to be one? I'm not saying don't transition out of the guy, but take your left guard, move him to center. All right, now we have a hole at left guard. Who's going to play that position? So it's a lot of fun.
Who's your guy that's a Browns fan?
He's a judge here in town. I won't give his last name, but his first name is Tom.
Okay. Only reason I ask is because I don't meet too many Browns fans.
He actually went to the Raiders game.
Okay.
Raiders-Browns game. And I was supposed to go too. It just, we had a dance thing. That's how I know him.
I wonder if he's from Cleveland.
He's from the Ohio area.
Okay.
Yeah. His wife's from Illinois, and then he's from Ohio. They met in Boston, and now they're here. She's an attorney, runs her own law firm, and then he just went the other route. Judge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, he met somebody that was actually from Cleveland and connected us. It was someone who was with EXP.
Oh, nice.
And
so I'm sitting in front of two Browns fans.
No, just me.
Okay.
Just me.
I'm on worse. I'm a Vikings fan.
Oh, nice.
But it's like, I told him, I'm like, I guarantee we know 900 people, and we did. And I got on the phone with her, and, we
It was
Cleveland out.
JoJo from the Deeds Call.
Oh, no. Nice.
So, but a lot of people that say they're from Cleveland, they're from like a...
Yeah. It's like Dallas
Which is
or
fine.
Houston.
I mean,
it's I'm from
not
Dallas, and if you know anything, or if I'm from New York,
Yeah.
what does that really mean?
Right.
It's so huge.
So are you originally from Austin?
I am originally from El Paso,
Okay.
Texas. Yeah, but I've lived here longer than I lived there. So I moved
Gotcha.
here in '92, and I moved up here to go to school. Started in construction. Kind of went to school. My friends were going to UT, and then just kind of, I don't know, partied a lot.
Right on. Yeah.
Can I say that?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
And then I landed in land surveying for 10 years, bartended, waited tables, and I guess everybody's kind of done that at some point. And
I feel like you have to.
yeah. Well, I tell my kids,
People who
it'd be-
don't are kind of shittier people.
it's like you got to know what it's like to be servicing to somebody like that, and how bad it can be when my kids were really young, like 2 years old, they would take, sugar packets and make this mound, and I'm stressing out. My wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "They're creating this huge mess," So, but anyways,
And someone's going to have to restock those sugar packets.
yeah, that's right.
Side work.
Clean it all up, and but anyways, I did 2 years for land surveying school, and then learned a lot of AutoCAD. Went into transportation for about 7 years, and then I bought my first house in 2006. It was supposed to be a flip property. Because I had a background in construction, and I was just like, I could do this. It's not that hard. It was kind of before YouTube, when you could just look anything up on YouTube. And then I just never flipped it. And then about 6 months later, my realtor at the time was like, "You want to buy another house?" I was like, "Can I?" And he's like, "I think so." So I bought a house in Del Valle, rented that out. And then at one time, I was renting both of them out, living in this little apartment. I was like, why am I doing this? So I moved back into the original house. 2010, I met my wife. 2010, we had a baby. And then we eventually sold both of those homes, and we live in the house that we live in now. But 2015,
When did you buy the home that you live in now?
2017.
Okay. So you held on to those two properties for like what, 10 years?
Yeah, the one in Del Valle, I called it the long flip. I was
Okay.
like, okay, we're just going to let it appreciate and then dump it and then sell it. But and that was on an arm,
Right.
80/20 arm.
Everything was at that
Oh
time.
my gosh. My first one wasn't. It was 80/20, but it wasn't an arm. It was still a fixed rate. And then, I was lucky in a way, I guess. The market crashed. Austin didn't get hit that hard, Texas in general, we didn't allow, the comp controller wasn't allowing any of those exotic loans. And believe me, I looked for them, like the Ninja loan, no income, job, or assets. I would like, give me $500,000. Give it to me right now. But they weren't allowing that. So,
You know what a lot of that law stems from?
what's that?
There was a big real estate crash in the late 80s.
Yeah, the savings and loan scandal.
Yeah, and Texas, in their constitution wrote a bunch of lending laws that no other state in the country has, and they're one of the most difficult to lend in.
Yeah, it's 49 other states and Texas.
That's
when it comes
correct.
to lending. And I've had guys come from Georgia and like, well, here's, they're wanting to do a stated loan. I was like, we
Right.
can't go back in time.
Yeah. So how much help, or maybe it wasn't any help, selling those two properties, how much did that do for you, holding on to those and then selling them and buying the home you live in now?
It did a lot for us. It really, and that's what I tell most people is like, hey, when you first, if you're like a first time home buyer and you're used to moving around a lot, 1 year, 2 years into your rental, you really can't plan for the future because you don't know what that's going to be, what the cost of living, your housing is going to be. But when you buy a house, nobody's banging on your door. Not that you should be late, but let's say that you are. The 5th day of the month, nobody's like knocking on your door with an eviction notice, right? That's the 30th if you choose to wait that long, right? And so it allows, and I'm not saying you should be late on your payments. I'm saying it allows you to say, well, this year we're buying the wife a car, and next year or 2 years from now we'll buy me the car, that type of thing. And so it allows you to have this long-term plan, and you get out of this vagabond, gypsy kind of style. No offense to any of the gypsies, where you're moving around a lot. Yeah, they've got their place. Moving around a lot, right? You're just in one place, and you know where your kids are going to be. You know who your neighbors are. In fact, when 2020 was happening, when all that craziness was happening, I'd always hear somebody say, well, if I sold my house, where would I go? And really what that was code for was, yes, I want all the equity in my home, in my bank account, but I don't want to rebuild my life. Like I generally like my neighbors. I like the school. So how do I get all that and the equity in my home? Well, you don't. And that's why a lot of them didn't sell. Because they were like, my twin sister didn't sell. A lot of people didn't sell. They were just kind of like, meh, I kind of like it here. Just let it go.
Are we talking fraternal twins or identical twins?
Fraternal twin. Yeah, I have a fraternal twin. Yeah,
Cool.
her name is
What's
Shannon.
that like?
It's a lot of fun.
What was it like growing up?
We at an early age we were in. My dad was stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is a military base, and so our first kindergarten year there, I think it was kindergarten or first grade, she was like doing all of my homework, and they were like, "Hey,
That's cool."
I guess, yeah. I'm like, hey, I got an employee here. But when we moved to Texas, this note came with it that we couldn't be in the same class. So we were never in the same class all the way. The only class that we had together was athletics, and we weren't even, I was doing football or track, and she was either in POMS or track, something along those things. So during track we were together, but other than that, we were never together. But it was a blast. It really was.
Well, shout out. What was her name again?
Shannon.
Shout out to Shannon.
Shout out to Shannon Swank.
We'll make sure that we clip that out and get it out there, make her famous. So going back to the purchase of your home and all of the things we talked about in 2020, because a lot of the stuff that we pull from here are things that, buyers and sellers kind of want to, troll, right? They don't want to necessarily have a conversation with a real estate agent, but it's always nice to kind of hear some of the things, and especially personal experiences, right? Because I always tell the story about when I purchased my first home, I had this budget in mind where I kind of wanted both ways, right? I wanted to be a little bit of a vagabond, but I also wanted, the stability of a home because I was in the industry, and I knew and I watched the success of other people. So I'm dating myself here with these payments, but I wanted my mortgage payment to be at least under $1,000 a month, all in with taxes and insurance and everything included.
yeah.
And that was doable, right? And so I purchased this property, and it was one of these, homes with good bones. And I went about it at my speed to get all the improvements done and whatnot. But the one thing that I tell first-time home buyers that I always think about is I look back on the monthly payment that I had, and I wish that I would have maybe purchased something that was a little more expensive, because we all know that in the world of appreciation, you make more money if you're purchasing a more expensive asset.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. And I did fantastic on this property. I did. Yeah. And I used it for a lot of other real estate purchases and opportunities, even in my business. But I think about the money that I could have afforded versus, what I was paying. I probably could have afforded double. Right. But I told myself the line that I hear so many people say, I don't want to be house poor.
I don't want to be house poor.
Which I don't even know what that means, right? Because I've identified it means something different to a lot of people.
Sure, yeah.
And technically, it's impossible to be house poor.
Well, yeah, if you're getting a loan, it's impossible. What it really means is it means I have a lifestyle that I want to maintain while owning a piece of real estate that is going to appreciate. And sometimes that's, there's trade-offs in life.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And I think about, what did I do with that extra, we'll just call it $1,000 a month that I was not spending on a mortgage? What did I do with it? And I think, man, you know what I did with it? I spent it on booze and dinners.
All the things you should
and
have. Fast
women,
alcohol. And,
right?
Yeah, all the good things in life.
And
right?
don't get me wrong, there were some great experiences that were associated with those times, but in hindsight's 2020, looking back and thinking, man, maybe I should have purchased something and maybe like a little more sought after of an area that was a little larger in square footage, something that would have forced me to maybe, tighten the belt financially a little bit. But in the long run, again, let's just say I sold this house and made $100,000. Well, if I would have done, I could have made $150,000. And now when I sold that home, I was 28.
Wow.
And not that a 28-year-old is super smart. I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I knew way better at 28 than when I purchased the house at like 24, 25.
Well, when I bought, so I want to circle back around. What it sets you up for is what you just talked about with first-time home buyer. When they buy and then they sell, whenever that is, as long as it's 3 or 4 years out. I always tell buyers 3% equity growth. If you can handle that, then that's when you sell. You may,
and that's super conservative.
Yeah. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 8. Here recently, it might be a little negative, but it went way up. That's what these numbers are. But if you can do that and you sell, then you're even if you make a lateral movement, now you've got some money in the bank. And I have clients that they bought a DR Horton, at like $215, and then they sold it for $345, and they sold that and bought something at $280, and they're just building this nest egg as they do it, as they go along. So I think that's one of the things that you achieve when you buy the home.
Yeah.
When we sold all that and bought a house, my wife was like, let's just buy this, 2,200 square foot. I was like, no, we've got a 3,500 square foot home on a corner lot. That's what we're buying. The biggest, baddest home we can afford, And she was like, okay. And so we did that. Now when we
and that was in 17.
That was in 17. It closed in 18.
So you've done pretty good.
Yeah, we've done well. We're not in Easton Park, but we're just across from Easton Park.
Bradshaw?
It's oh gosh, I put myself on the spot.
We bought around the same time.
Yeah, and
I was in Easton Park.
When I bought my first house,
it's like a whole nother planet over there.
My agent at the time, I found the house, I did all these things, but I was really like I knew what the MLS areas were, and so my experience in land surveying and when I was doing construction, I'd been around Austin, and so I was like, well, there's this little pocket, which is Area 10S or 78745, that if you go west and you hit, say, Brody, every price goes way up.
Yeah.
You go south and you hit, say, Slaughter, prices going up, newer construction, right? You go east and you hit I-35. It's like the Dove Springs area, which is not, I don't live in Dove Springs, but closer over
I know
there.
what you're talking about.
Yeah. East Austin wasn't what it is now. So it's like, I don't know if I want to live there. So there was this little area south of William Cannon. I was like, man, this is like, it's ready to just shoot up in price, and that's what happened. Now, 2020 did help, but we sold before 2020, but yeah, we did well, and really it was just because I was really focused on one. I think I had more experience than some other people than most buyers. The layout of
But isn't that what you hire a real estate agent for?
it is. It's true. That's true. And
So you do serve a purpose.
My survey background allowed me to, I'm always
Right.
looking at tax maps and just everything from bird's eye view. So I'm like, oh yeah. So I had this grandiose view of the whole city. And so I was like, here's where I need to buy. And I don't mind saying I bought that house for 106.
Wow.
And it had a broken windows and flooring was coming up. And, my family was like, are you sure you want to buy that? And I'm like, yeah, look at it. Beautiful. I can fix all this.
Yeah, the vision.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun buying that house. But yeah, I think it's harder to do that now, but it's still relative. I think there's a saying, I think Matthew's heard this, time in the market, not timing the market. So once you buy, like we can't go in the past. I'll never. I don't know that you could sell a house for $100,000 here in Austin.
Well, if
right?
people could go in the past, they would.
Yeah, exactly. Unless the seller's ready to just do something stupid and sign $100,000. If you listed something for $100,000, you might get 100,000 offers at $100,000. So it'll just go up and up and up at that point. But yeah, you can't go back in time. So when should you start building equity? Tomorrow or today?
Yeah,
Probably today.
100%.
Probably today.
When did you get started as a real estate agent?
Probably, technically, when I was in, looking for my first home, everybody's like, you should be a real estate agent. I was like, I want real estate agents to work for me on my team, but I didn't even know what kind of company I was going to have at the time. Just kind of flipping. I was just kind of doing what you're doing, is partying a lot. I knew it. I saw an infomercial. I saw an infomercial about flipping properties. I was like, I could do this. So I went to the free thing and I was like, I don't need these guys. And then I just dove into all the resources that were out there that were
So
free.
when did you get licensed?
Licensed in 2015.
Okay.
It was kind of a weird licensing thing for me because with my survey background, I just they had like a form with a test on the back. So I was like, let's just see what I can do. And so just not studying at all, I got a 55. I'm like, wow, I'm 15 correct answers away from getting my license.
Yeah.
And so I blew through I'm a guy that's like path of least resistance type of thing. So when I had a plan to get through the test quickly, and I executed that plan. So the next day was a Wednesday. I think I was supposed to take my test. Well, on Tuesday, a storm came through and blew over a 30-foot China berry that was in my backyard, and it landed on our house. That sounds horrible. We were extremely blessed and lucky. It landed on this center 4x4 post of our porch. It did penetrate the roof, but not the ceiling.
Nice.
So I had a little bit of work to do, got out the chainsaw, cut it down. And I was like, okay, I've got to push off this test. A year later, I'm like, I should take this test. So took the practice test at the end. I think I got like a 60-something. When in the course of doing the test, I wrote down all the questions and all the answers, studied that, went in, passed everything. I didn't pass the math, which I was like, what is going on? Math should be 100%. Came back the next day, passed it, and then that was it. I was on my run. And then I did, I was still in transportation, did another 6 months in transportation. No. Another, because we hadn't bought the house yet. Another 2 years in transportation, kind of doing real estate part-time. And then I told my wife, when we buy the house, I'm putting in the notice. And so we closed on a Friday, and Sunday night she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm writing my 2 weeks. And she's like, you can't, we just bought a house. And I'm like, I told you what was going to happen. I had already left that business. And I was ready to start doing this. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice. They asked me to stay another 4 months or so. And so I did that. And then,
Never looked back.
Never looked back. Yeah, I should have brought it in. The company was downtown, and that March was South by Southwest, and there was one of these poets that like you just tell them what you want, like a subject, a little bit of the subject and what you're doing, and they'll crank out a little poem for you in like 20 seconds, something like that. And so, unlike a real typewriter.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and I remember grabbing it and like I was working in the tolling industry, so toll roads. And I told him what I was doing. He cranked out this little poem. I still have it in my office on my wall. It's really every time I'm like, I read that. I'm like, yes, this is why I'm doing it.
So when you went 100%, what was one thing that you thought was going to happen that didn't?
For me personally,
Yeah.
My goal was to get to a point where I could buy a lot, build a house, and sell it. And that didn't happen as quickly or at all, really. I didn't realize, when you're in the moment, you're living in the moment. And I didn't realize how much time and money and effort my kids would take up. And I'm not like, oh, it's my kids' fault. No, I love being with my kids. I think I told Matt, I saw one of his posts, and I was like, man, when they're babies, you'll never, ever get that back unless you have another baby, right? And so they'll be teenagers and adults. You'll know them forever, but the baby is only going to be there for a little while. So I really wanted to be in their lives at that time. So I didn't work as much, worked really hard, a lot of late nights because I was up with them, and then we'd go to bed. My wife would go to sleep, and then I'm back at it till 2 a.m, something like that. Wake up at 7 or 8, and then start it again. But you can't really approach your clients at 2 a.m, so you're really just doing data research, those types of things. And then 2020 hit, so it was really it was even harder at that point to get to that buy a lot, build a home, sell it. So, but it's something that is going to happen probably. I want to say this year. We'll see.
What's the why behind that?
I just, this is going to be, this isn't crazy, but it's just kind of something that was told to me, and I just kind of believed it. So my dad's from South Texas, and my grandmother would always go see this person, and she was like a fortune teller, apparently. And so I went down there, and I didn't actually see her, but she saw me, the fortune teller, because she was at my grandmother's birthday party. And my dad, she was like, "Who's that?" And my dad was like, "Oh, that's my youngest son, Sean." And she said, "He's going to build a lot of houses."
Interesting.
And I was like, okay. I was already in construction at that time, so I was kind of like, okay. And that kind of got me just thinking about it. So I don't know if that was my future or if somebody told me something that I was already into, but I just kind of gravitated towards that after.
Maybe you got to go work for a builder.
Well, that's why I got out of corporate.
Right. No,
I want to do it myself,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, the truth be told, like this could have already been done. There's a lot of different ways to get money. Mm-hmm. Angel investors, hard money, all that stuff. So the reason why I haven't done it is because I've been devoting time to my daughters and my wife.
How old are your children?
14 and 10.
Okay.
So they're at that age now where they're like forming their own realities. For all the parents out there, about this time, they're going to not want to be around you, And
what's that feel like?
Well, I kind of knew it was coming, I knew it was coming. And so my wife is like, they're not babies anymore, And I'm like, well, I mean, men and women handle it differently. So I'm not like saying that the way she's handling it is bad. It's just the way she's handling it.
Sure.
So, but they'll come back, They're going to go out and see some things and do some things, and then they'll need advice, and we'll be there. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's kind of like when they're kids, like when they're dancing, they're like, don't come to my dance recital. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going, And then they're nervous, and then you can kind of see them looking for you, and then they see you, and they're like, all right, they did come,
Interesting.
It's just that kind of. Not all kids are like that. Mine were, and so. It's like they don't want you there, but they want you there. They want to know you're there, but they just want some independence. That's all, and that's what's happening right now. Independence.
It's funny. My girlfriend's like that. She doesn't want me there, but
she wants to
she
know
wants
you're there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the real estate stuff, building a house, I love it. I hope that you get that done.
It will. It'll happen.
One of the things we always try to focus on, especially when we have someone who hasn't been on the podcast, is, the entrepreneurial aspect of things because, well, real estate agents, whether they know it or not, are self-employed.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're doing or that you maybe have started doing or what works for you as far as generating new business? Like if you're talking to a newer agent and they're like, man, Sean, you're the man. You know, you're closing all these deals and you're just making things happen. Like, how do I be more like Sean?
This one took me a long time to learn because I try to go as fast as I can. I set a goal and I try to get there as fast as I can. And real estate, that can happen for you really quickly. But I skipped over some things, like the root of what you need to be doing, and that stunted my growth a little bit. So I had some growth, and then I kind of plateaued, and I didn't really get that extra bump, which was in 2020. And that is the lingo of real estate, which we're on Dietz's Call in the morning, and that's really what it's about. What do you say? How do you say it? Your words matter when you're talking to your current client or somebody that you want to be your client. And so that's really what I'm focusing on now is getting that lingo, but then getting it out there as well. So I was just on X, Twitter, earlier, and somebody was saying that real estate agents aren't ready for AI. And I look at that and I'm like, I always hear that and I'm like, well, ready for what? How are we not ready? And so this is the other part that I'm doing. It's the thing that I think a lot of agents need to be doing. And it's what I see happening with AI is you have a lot of entrepreneurs that are creating these solutions for problems that don't exist. And they view
Matt loves those things.
and they view
He loves solutions for problems that don't exist.
Well, they view like
what?
Where do I begin?
I'm open. Like we got time.
Go ahead. I'll give you a couple here in a second.
Yeah. They view EXP. They say, wow, EXP has 80,000 employees, right?
Okay.
But EXP doesn't have 80,000 employees. They have 80,000 entrepreneurs.
Got it.
Right?
I see what you mean.
And so they're like,
87,000.
87,000. There you go. So they don't view us as employees, not entrepreneurs, not people that are actually out there trying new things, doing new things to create more business, doing exactly what they're doing, right? And then the other thing that they don't realize is that you may have heard this before, the last mile concept, right? Like Amazon, UPS, FedEx, Walmart, they can all ship things. Well, two of them are carriers, but they can all ship things anywhere in the world. But that last mile, getting it from the warehouse to the front door is the hardest part. And that's what agents are. You know, why doesn't the AI experience with iBuyers work? Because nobody trusts robots right now. Doesn't matter. They want to be able to look into something. And maybe that'll change. I don't know. I don't think it will. I think humans, as far away as we have gotten from living in caves, we're still living in caves in some aspects. And this is one of them. That's community. That's knowing somebody, trusting somebody.
Well, and I think that that's kind of what I mean as far as like creating AIs for problems that don't exist. These problems, they're real, right? But the solution to the majority of these problems already exists. Right. And there's not an AI that's going to fix it. Because there's two things that you said in, your kind of what you just said to me that resonated with me. The first, and I kind of want you to unpack it, which is where you talked about how you kind of went from point A to point B. You did it as quickly as possible. That's how you roll. But there were a few things that you lost along the way. And, one of the things we talk about in business is that, and real estate is one that I love teasing real estate agents on because I always have to talk to the Karen real estate agent that has been in the business for 20 years.
Yeah.
And she wears it like a badge of honor. But through identifying and having conversations with Karen, I realized Karen hasn't been a real estate agent for 20 years. Karen has been a real estate agent for 3 years, 7 times.
7 times. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That makes sense.
And so, that evolution that you're kind of talking about is one of those things that I agree. I think it's super important. You mentioned the lingo, right? And this is something I was doing presentations on with real estate agents, and it was a bad look in front of some teams. They were upset with me where one of the things that I've identified about a lot of real estate agents, just broad stroke statement, is that a lot of them don't think they're salespeople.
Yeah.
They think that they are, you can use whatever word you want to use to make it to make it sound cleaner, oh, I educate and then, we do this and we do that. And all of those things are true, but you're selling homes and you're selling yourself if you're going to be doing listing presentations. And so again, it's refreshing to hear real estate agents say things like, my words matter. The way that I say things matter. That's sales.
Yeah, that's sales. I would say I don't sell the home. My wife, because my wife is a really, really good salesperson.
Okay.
Really, really good. She just does it. She just knows how to do it. Doesn't, she's probably taken language of sales or something like that earlier on. She used to work for Nordstrom. So she's really good at selling an eye cream the size of a quarter for $1,000. She can do that. To me, it's not my job to sell a person on the home, right? If they want white countertops and you sell and they buy a home with black countertops, they might resent you a little bit if you were like pushy. I think sales can be pushy. So I just kind of like, hey, here are your options. That's it. To me, the sales is selling them on me.
Sure.
Right? That's what I'm selling. I'm selling me and my skill set. And then once you become my client, then you get to experience my skill set. But the skill set is set up so that you're the one making the decisions, including when it comes to negotiation. Like I'm like, hey, this is what I think is going to happen, and this is how I want to react. But I'm representing you. Do you want me to say this, or this? And this is the reasons why I would say each one of those things. And then they pick one and say, I don't care. I just want the lowest price. All right, fine. And then or the high, I just want the highest price, whichever,
You've heard the saying, the customer's always right, right?
Yeah.
You know that's not the full saying.
What's the full saying?
I mean, this is true for the record. This isn't a joke. The full saying is the customer is always right in color and taste. So to your point about countertops, right? If we're talking about something that is in color, and it started in the automobile industry for the record. I don't know who decided that they were going to eliminate the color and taste because the customer is not always right.
Right.
But they are always right in the color that they prefer something to be. And when it comes to food or style, color and taste, the customer is always right.
Yeah.
So again, there's nothing to sell there. I agree with you 100%. But yeah,
they do. Yeah, and I will say this: like sometimes clients need a little pushing. Meaning, if they say they want 3 things, you get all 3 and a 4th, and they're like, "Well, I don't know." That's when you might like, hey, that's when maybe I wouldn't call it sales. You just circle back and say, okay, let's see. You wanted this countertop, this school district at this price. Here it is. It's go time.
Yep.
It is go time right now. We should be making an offer. You should be making an offer. And I got that from my aunt. My aunt's been a real estate agent in Houston, 30 plus years, something like that. And my cousin was buying a home. And of course he was using her. And he was first time home buyer. He was getting a smoking hot deal. And he was like, I don't know, Dia. And she was like, Fernando, you're buying this house right now. And he was like, okay. And he told me he was like scared to sign. And he signed. And then years later, he was like, I was so glad I bought that house because of what we talked about earlier. He let it, he had more kids. He had a couple more kids. It grew in equity. They sold, bought a bigger house. And he's on his 3rd house, and making money the whole way.
Well, and I think it comes down to that solid needs assessment.
Yeah.
If you're doing a good needs assessment with a client, no matter what you are selling, and you're taking that information and you're, I mean, for lack of a better term, like to your point, using it against them, saying, well, wait a second, we talked about this, we covered all of these bases, and if your conviction is there that the needs assessment was done correctly, then yeah, you absolutely have to say, look, you're doing this.
Yeah. Well, usually it's something else. Like they're not giving you something that they like, oh, well, my aunt needs kidney something, a surgery, and we have to give part of our down payment to that. Okay, well, that's
a kidney.
Yeah, right. And so whatever it is. And so sometimes it's usually that, and it's something they don't want to tell you, right? So I don't force them to do anything. I just need to know, I need to have more information so that we can make a better decision, right? They're not changing their mind. They're just making a different decision on more information, right? And so when I get more information, then we can solve whatever problem that they have. It's also, I forgot what I was going to say. It's also with buyers and sellers, they don't always give you the information, and sometimes they don't. They're just not going to do it, and you just have to back off.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's
Is it strategy? Is it because it's personal?
Here's what it comes down. This is what I was going to say. Sometimes it's just a trust issue. So a lot of times the first conversation I have with them is like, look, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice, but I'm not going to go blabbing this stuff to people.
Yeah.
It's just between us. And I can't represent you better if I don't know everything.
Sure.
And so a lot of times I'll say, look, you guys are not going to tell me some things. And most of the time you won't have to tell me those things. But if it's a big shift in what we're trying to accomplish, then it might be something you want to tell me. And
do you find that that's disarming?
Sometimes. I had a referral guy in Dallas, and he was telling me that he's married, but his wife wasn't going to be on the loan or title. And I was like, that's odd. He's like, what, is that odd? And I was like, yeah. I was like, well, not on the loan. I get that. I see that we see it all the time.
Yeah,
one of the husband or wife has a low credit score, whatever it is, but they're always on title.
Right.
And so I was like, look, if you don't put her on title, if there's a tragedy, it's going to be extremely hard for her to get this property in her name. It'll take time, all of these things. Finally, he let me know that she wasn't an American citizen. And so that's why he was doing all this. I was like, okay, thank you for telling me. This is something that the loan officer needs to know. And
title for sure.
Exactly. I said title, like these are the only people.
You can still do a TOD on it, and then at least you'd have a shot at probate.
I just said, all these people are here to help you, not to do anything else. Title is going to, because you're married, title is going to keep banging on this until you reveal what's happening. What you should be doing is making sure that title is keeping their unbiased third-party position. And so you make sure that they don't say anything to the other side. I don't care what relationship they have with the list agent. You don't share a good morning. Oh,
right.
They came in and said good morning. None of that. And I've been in situations where that wasn't the case. And, we still got the deal done.
So do you use that as part of kind of like your script when you meet with clients, or is it like on a case-by-case scenario? And if you do use it, when?
Usually, most of the time, that isn't there. But I think when there's an obvious situation why somebody wouldn't do something or would, then I think it just brings up more questions. And then when you ask another question, you get another dodging of the question.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're like, okay, there's something going on here. And maybe I'm just intuitive. I don't know. I'm going to leave it alone for now. Because this was on the third conversation I had with him. Because I'm not in Dallas. I was getting an agent for him. And so I'm like, look, this is how I do it. I put a post out, get about 10 agents, interview them, pick 3 or 4 that I think are right for you, and then you interview them, and then you pick the one. And so during that process, we kept getting to this spot where, okay, the other agent is going to ask this question, and he's going to keep running into this until he divulges what's going on. And so he told me, and so I told the other agent, this is what's going on. Make sure title knows that this is happening. And we're closing on February 3rd. So
nice.
Yeah.
Congrats.
He's got his duplex. He's ready to roll.
Kemps, what do you think EXP means by the statement that agents are not ready for AI?
Well, did EXP say that?
Isn't that what you just said?
No, that was a Twitter post.
Oh, excuse me. And who posted that?
There is a person, her name is Amy something. She's actually out of Dallas. She's on Fox, and she does a lot of real estate stuff. And so I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, whatever. I just if I'm getting good information, I'm getting good information. And somebody posted on her, I don't think agents are ready for AI. And so I was like, well, we are ready for AI. We're just not ready for AI that solves a problem that doesn't exist.
Got it.
A lot of people think, they're not going to be ready. AI is going to take over everything. I'm like,
so that's what you thought, or that's what it was meant.
That's what I thought he was saying.
You're not ready, real estate agents are going to become obsolete due to AI?
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's what I think his thing was. And so that was he didn't actually say that. And
buckle in, agents, you're going to be out of a job.
Yeah. And
they've been saying that about my industry for 20 years.
It's just there's just too much that can go wrong.
Dan Gilbert's trying to put us out of business. He's been literally doing it. They've done such a great job. They had to change their company name from Quicken Loans to Rocket Mortgage.
Oh my gosh. Well, they're getting Rocket is in a lawsuit with, I can't remember the name of the brokerage, decent sized brokerage, but they were getting kickbacks to only present Rocket Mortgage clients, or only have Rocket Mortgage be their clients' agents or their loan officers.
Yeah, I know.
It goes a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I know that Rocket was
craziness.
doing something along those lines where like they actually got their real estate license and they were giving leads and then collecting portions of the commissions. So kind of like what Zillow does, but they were legally allowed to do it somehow because in this instance they were acting as like a real estate brokerage and then the lender was the lender, but it's all like, it's just a hydra with same
like
body, multiple heads.
It's like a bicycle wheel. You got the hub company and you got all these spokes coming out and
But
taxes in between.
yeah, Quicken Loans is supposed to be putting us out of business over the last 20 years. Like, what's interesting is that, and I only know this because, Quicken Loans is obviously Quicken Loans Arena's in Cleveland. That's where that's where I'm from. And the reason they changed their name to Rocket was because Quicken Loans started and Dan Gilbert was like, I can get anybody off the street and put them in front of a computer software. And all they have to do is fill out the questions from the client, and then the computer software will dictate the loan type and everything, and we can close it all digitally.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is when it was Quicken Loans. Do you know what the name of that software system that Dan Gilbert invented was called?
Open Door?
Rocket.
Okay. So it's the tropical thunder.
So
theory,
all of
right?
the
A
agents,
nutless monkey can do it.
So all of the agents that were at Quicken Loans were operating in the system called Rocket. So when they rebranded for whatever reason, and I have a few ideas of maybe why, but when they rebranded, they decided to rebrand to Rocket because if I'm not mistaken, Dan Gilbert was also involved in inventing QuickBooks. But his original big hit was he bought Rawlings, and with the Rawlings brand did all of the fatheads.
The sports fatheads? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Rawlings as in the baseball company?
Mm-hmm. And he turned that brand around.
Wow. Yes. Well, to get where I think agents are lacking in AI is the use of AI for branding, marketing, and information spreading. That's where I think a lot of agents are going to have to catch up quickly. Mm-hmm. But, and so that could be a problem, right? And that's where an entrepreneur could come in and be like, oh, you're behind on your AI. Here's your suite, just do this. So I'm seeing a lot of that right now. But it's not very good. The reviews on it is just not good.
What do you think a lot of the reluctancy is with agents to, one thing that I heard on a podcast that's interesting is now we just call it AI, but at the end of the day, technology has always kind of existed. And I know artificial intelligence, you can debate that there are certain aspects of it that are legitimate, like AI, but now AI has just become the word that we use for technology almost.
Yeah.
And it has been no secret that even over the last 20 years, no matter what business you're in, there is a constant fight when the new technology comes out. I'll start with you, Kemps. What do you think the main pushback is for most people? Is it the work and learning the system? Is it the fear of it taking jobs? What's the reluctancy in the real estate world?
Majority that I'm seeing is going to be reluctancy to change.
Just change.
Yeah. And not knowing what it's capable of and understanding it.
Well, if you're afraid of change, you're in the wrong business.
Well, I would piggyback on that and say, you're asking a real estate agent who, after taxes, after paying brokerages, fees, all the things that go into a transaction that get, like piranhas get taken out of it, you're asking the agent to get on a monthly plan for something that they don't know is going to work. Right. So I'll have people call me every day. Hey, we're doing these lead generations, 25%. And I'm like, okay, does it come with a lender's pre-approval letter? No. They're double verified. I'm like, oh, okay. So they're double verified. That sounds great. I'll give you 1%. And they're like, no. These are really great leads. I'm like, it's just a phone number and an email address, right? Double verified means nothing. Do you know what their credit score is? Well, they told me. I'm like, okay, they told you. And I'm not saying buyers, the people are lying about their credit score.
No,
Some people
never.
just don't know. People just don't know what their credit score is. So like, I think it's 700, and then you turn out it's 5 something, or they think it's 5 and it turns out to be 7. Like I've seen both of those. So to round it back in, it's this monthly fee on something that you don't know is going to work. Even with like Zillow and their leads, or Realtor.com has called me and they're like, yeah, we've got this plan for you, Dale, Texas. It'll be about 30 leads a month, and we at the end of the year we project you to close 2 of those deals. It's $300 a month. And they don't know when this closure is going to happen. Oh, and then I find out that Realtor.com and Zillow are being sued for cross-pollinating the leads, meaning they say it's only going to Matt, but it's coming to me too. Matt is done with it. They think Matt's done with it, and they send it to me.
What was the
what's
statistic that you
happening?
told me about? I think it was either 23 or 24. That it was something like the real estate industry identified that there was like 5 million leads, but only like
2
Yeah, it was
million sales.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And roughly 18, that one person as a lead gets sent to 18 different agents.
right. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, do you know my theory on buyer leads? Have you ever talked to you about that?
We have not talked
This is
about
a good one.
Okay, so a buyer lead. What's attached to that buyer lead to make it a lead? Like why do we think of that as a lead? Like really dig deep on that.
Well, okay, so like a true lead or just something called a lead? Just something called a lead.
Realtor.com, they got a lead.
Yeah.
Okay. What makes that a lead?
They filled out a form. That's
Okay.
it. They just clicked on something and said, here's a name, here's email address, blow me at yahoo.com, and there's the lead, and that's it.
And what is associated to that person that you can sell?
The phone number and the email. That's it.
Okay, what's associated to a seller?
What's associated to the house?
Every lead to me is a seller lead,
This is a seller lead. Got it.
unless they're renting, and now I have to prove myself. That's the worst lead to put it. Not that I can't prove myself,
Yeah.
but like there's nothing to sell.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the companies that are doing really good reevaluate. I think Fellow, where they go through your database, they say, all right, how many potential opportunities do you have? We're going to turn all these buyer leads you have into seller leads and rechange the campaign. So Matt, you got 30,000 people in your database. Let's turn all these people into seller leads. They may not sell tomorrow. They may not
Yeah.
sell in 3 years. They may not sell in 10 years. But let's figure out who these all are as a seller base and then flip that script around.
Put them in their buckets.
And then when they do say, hey, yeah, I want to sell my house. Okay, you don't want to sell your house because you enjoy selling your house. You want to sell your house because you're emotionally driven to go buy somewhere else. Now that's a buyer lead because I have a seller lead that was able to establish the credit of what that lead was.
Got it.
Then that's like, hey, Matt, you know what? Let's partner with listing agents because listing agents are the ones who can get things done.
Because everyone's a buyer.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to know really what was going on with Austin's market. And so I was like, the only way to do it is to get out there and do it. So I did 2 open houses. I mean, you can call people, but I wanted to kind of be in front of people that I
Totally.
didn't know. So I did Labor Day weekend. I did 6 open houses, 2 a day, all 3 days. And then I had a property that I had, other properties that I had 2 agents do. So 8 total open houses. And they didn't give me the feedback that I wanted, but every weekend I did at least 2 open houses, either 2 on the same day or 1 Saturday, 1 Sunday until the end of November. Labor Day, or not including Thanksgiving. And what I found was that half the people, sometimes we didn't have anybody walk in, so I don't want to make it seem like there was 20 people, 20 groups walking in every open house. But half the people that walked in were sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, I'm just trying to, I want to time the market so that I can sell high. I'm sorry, and buy low. And I'm like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's all relative. If you're buying low, if you're selling low, you're buying low.
We can get you in a rental for a year.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like, I don't have anything else.
Well, and then we go into, interest rates and all of those things. And
Sure.
so, but that's what I kind of figured out, that the majority of people that are out looking, as you said, are actually sellers that don't like something about their house. Now, the thing that they love about, the thing that they don't want to exchange is a 3.5% for a 7.5%. So they're like, meh, we don't need the pull.
What's my give and take on that?
What's that?
What's my give and take on the 3.5 to 7.5?
And so now, like last year, there was a lot of talk of interest rates dropping, which in September, you could have refied at 5.99. And so if you had a 7 or heaven forbid, you have an 8, you closed in October of 23, then you got a little reprieve there. You could have refinanced and got low. Now, some of my clients did, some of them didn't. The ones that didn't, we kind of thought it was going to keep going lower, but it didn't. It went up. So for buyers, I think, and sellers right now, I think what's happening is we're seeing stability, not volatility. When they see what's going to happen is happening, then they can make a decision on that. But if they keep thinking that there's going to be volatility going up and down and up and down and up and down and hopefully down, then they just put on the brakes and wait for it to happen. But we've been at 7 for what, 4 months now, something like that.
Yeah.
It's been in and around high 6s, low 7s
Right.
for 6 months, right? So now they're just kind of seeing it. And then you couple that with this. I've said this a lot. This is not a political statement. Now you couple that with Trump coming into office, who won the electoral vote, and more importantly, the popular vote. So it's one thing to have the electoral vote, but when you have everybody that voted, the majority of them voted for you, now you have that. And so I think perception is reality. And if you think it's going to get better than it is, then it's going to, whether it does or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so Trump just had his inauguration speech, and I was hoping. My prediction was if he said something about real estate,
He did.
Well, he did a little bit, but I was hoping he'd say something like
Like
I'm going to lower interest rates down to 3%. Anybody who wants to buy a home can. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to be amazing. I was hoping to hear that.
Pretty
pretty
good.
good.
But we didn't hear that. So now we have a bunch of people but he did say a little something. So I was thinking if we heard something like that, then we'd have the first 8 months were going to be not crazy, but really good. But since we just heard a little bit, I'm thinking like the first 4 months of real estate of this year are going to be good, and then we'll just kind of see what happens, what he does, because he might say that. So with Trump specifically,
Yeah, but if he says that and it doesn't happen, now you got everybody sitting on the fence.
Doesn't matter. That's the thing with presidents. Like you can say one thing and do another. The thing with Trump is it works in his favor both ways. It
Right.
just does.
And he's built so much social media influence on what he does.
Yeah. So it doesn't. Again, we're not dealing in my opinion, we're not dealing with what he's going to do. The perception is it's going to get better. The truth is the economy is actually not doing that bad. It's actually doing really well. We're the envy of everybody else, all the other countries. Inflation isn't good, but the economy's doing really well. Jobs report came out flat last time it came out. So we have people that don't have work. But
Came out today.
okay, I haven't seen today's. And so
It was fairly flat. I mean,
yeah, there's not a big swing. So there's still people that are looking for jobs, but there's still a lot of people that have jobs. So the economy's doing pretty well. Doesn't really matter. He's the president now, whether it was because of him or the previous, it doesn't really matter. It's about perception. So people perceive. So you take perception with stability, and now people can make a decision. Stable rates with the perception that the economy is going to be really good. And you say, well, I work at Dell, and we just got done firing people. I bet because the Fed lowered rates, Dell can borrow a bunch of money, and I'll keep my job. Let's do it. Let's sell
we've
and
been
buy.
saying that's, it's the consistency in the marketplace is what really does breed buyers and sellers more than, reduced interest rates or anything like that. Because going back to your AI thing, spending money and everything along those lines, the one thing that I've identified, and this could be a sales thing or it could just be something that's in real estate in general, is that in every facet of real estate, whether it's the AI technology that you want to purchase or whether it's the guy who's waiting to time to market, or the one thing that everybody wants in real estate that doesn't exist is a guarantee.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You want a guarantee on this lead. Oh, it's been double verified. Well, does it have a pre-approval? What are their credit scores? You want a guarantee before you're going to put up any money. Sellers want a guarantee on their purchase price. We all know that, even when your house gets listed, I always see, my house has been listed. I'm like, are you through inspection? No. Are you through appraisal? No.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, no guarantees yet. But, and that's unfortunately in this business, one thing that just doesn't exist that everybody really, really wants.
I always say that. I'm like, my wife is like, hey, that went under contract. I'm like, it did. But we're not at the closing table yet.
Correct.
It's not done until
We've
we're
had
at the
clients
closing
die.
table. Yeah, like 4 days before because they
Yeah.
bought a truck or something.
No, I've literally twice in my career, I've had two situations where I've had clients die, and
Oh my gosh, literally. I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, literally, like they
Pass away.
don't live here
Yeah.
on this earth
They've
anymore.
moved on. Wow.
And as a lender, I'm always stressing the urgency of closing as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to situations with job loss, because I have situations where people have unfortunately they're like, oh, we have plenty of time. We want to stretch the closing out so that we can have our first payment not due until May. Let's do a 60-day closing. And then all of a sudden someone loses their job. And I've had people say, well, wait a minute, Matt, like why would somebody who lost their job, why would they want to be in a home? And I'm like, well, you're going to have to figure out a place to live no matter what.
Yeah.
To your point of the apartment situation,
Renting.
your eviction is way closer down the line than it is if you own a home.
Yeah.
You are in a way more secure position owning a property and losing your job. So it's like,
you have
let's
time.
close.
You have the one
Let's
thing you
close
can't
as
give
quickly
up.
as we can. And the death one is the one that really frustrates me. And because you say things like anything can happen and people are like, oh, that's crazy. And I remember, like this time in 2020 when it's like, hey guys, let's close. We got time. I don't want to rush anything. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, there's a pandemic and all these people are furloughed.
Oh my gosh.
Snowmageddon
Snowmageddon
slowed
happened,
us
yeah.
down
Yeah,
to
yeah.
where we had to do re-inspections on all of the properties that hadn't closed because we needed to make sure that there were no pipes that burst or anything. And people are like, this is total bullshit. I'm like, well, if we would have just closed last week, like I
Right.
fucking asked you to. Oh, but I don't want to talk to the sellers. They have a refrigerator in the garage and they don't want to move it out yet.
You know what? And so to what you were saying, like pushing it out, or like I've got clients now that like their lease is up in April, end of April, and we put in an offer. We couldn't come to terms, which I didn't think we would. And I warned them. I was like, look, they've been in this house a while. All the reasons why I didn't think they would take the lowball offer or the offer that we put in. But I was like, look, let's ask for a seller concession, which is if you're a buyer out there and your agent isn't asking for a seller concession,
They're fucking up.
they're fucking up. Yeah. And so that seller concession can get you to close and push part of it could push the closing out, or not the closing, but your first payment out. So I was like, yes, let's do this. We'll go for a seller concession, and then we'll just use that to push your first month's payment out.
Right.
Which is just paying, a month of.
Get
month
the
or
deal
two of-
funded, though.
Yeah. Get it funded and let's go. And that'll just give you more time to move.
Why don't you? Because I
What
don't
do
want to
we
waste
got
it.
right
I don't want to.
here?
I don't want to waste it. I can't stop looking at it.
So this one's for everybody in the market, right? It's for buyers and sellers. So buyers want a low price, which they can get right now, and sellers want a high price, but they're waiting for it, right? So these are some statistics that Lance Lambert Resci Club came up with.
Written in pencil, by
Written
the way.
in pencil. I was trying to prepare for this, and I was like, oh gosh, right before I came. All right, so since March of 2020, the real estate market in Austin is plus 33.4% up, right? So if you had a house that, make it easy on me, 100,000 in 2020, now it's worth 133. However, since the peak of 2022, it's down 22.7%. Month over month, it's down 0.8%, and year over year is down 3%, 3.2%. Right. So, what does all this pencil numbers mean? It just means that if you want a low price, it's out there. A lot of homes are. Matt and I were talking about this before we went live, and I don't mind going over it again. The difference between the original list price and the sale price, that percentage. So let's say it's at, if your original list price is 100, and if they sell for 90, that's 10% less than what they thought they were going to get, or what they thought is probably the wrong word, than what they had put out there to begin with, hoped,
Right.
whatever. And so when you're looking to buy, that number, that ratio is extremely important when you're looking around. It's important to understand where the house will appraise and what is the seller thinking, right? Because,
What is the seller thinking?
well, when they price too high, then it means one of two things. Either, because I don't want to say, oh, it's the agent's driving the price up. It could be. It could be the agent saying, oh, they don't know, they're not looking at this ratio. And they're saying, yeah, $3 million all day or 450 all day. And when you apply this ratio to it, then you actually see that it's 400 all day or 395 all day. And so now you're just wasting time on the market, right? You may the house might be fabulous, might show incredibly, but you get no offers, right? So a lot of showings, no offers, it's the price. And so you're just wasting time on the market. And in this market, it's not going like this, right? It's going like this. So that's the year over year minus 3.2%, month over month 0.8%. So that's now his numbers are the whole entire market, right? So if we go into like Westlake 787, I think it's 4.1. It's not going like this.
Yeah.
Right. If anything, it's going
4.6.
like this. 4.6. That's right. Yeah. I always do in areas. It's area 8, but
8S and
yeah.
8W.
And so that's right. But there's the last time I ran these numbers, I think Matt and I had talked about this a little bit. The majority of sales are happening in Buda. Why are they happening in Buda and Kyle?
Affordability.
That,
First-time home buyers.
Well, and when you live in Westlake, you probably got a cushion. You even want to sell. It didn't sell. All right, let's just, the economic conditions do affect you, but they don't affect you like if you're, working at an HEB, or, you bought a few years ago and, you both have great jobs, but you have to sell. Or you need to sell for some reason. And now when you're living in Butte and you have to sell, well, now you're likely, you may come down. You may come down that 0.8% or whatever that ratio is. And if your agent is smart enough and knows how to query these numbers, then they can advise you properly. And a lot of times, Matt's been in this situation, I've been in this situation where you go in and they're like, well, so-and-so said 500. I'm like, well, it's not me saying it. I'm not saying anything. It's the MLS. It's previous buyers that are saying this.
And the only thing I am saying is how we're going to predict the market so I can help you show the data better.
Exactly. So, so that's what the seller is thinking to bring it back around. They're thinking, yes, they want a lot of money, but they're being advised by somebody. And that somebody either knows how to do the data or they don't. Now, a lot of these overpriced homes are builders. And so they're not out there to lose money. And some of these projects take a year or 2 years from when they purchased it, when they broke ground to completion. And so, they're...
And they're working off an ARV that was initially established.
Exactly. And I think, especially in East Austin right now, we've seen a lot of those, and like Crestview and Allendale, that area. We're seeing a lot of these projects slowly coming off the market. They're getting off the market. My client is, one of my clients is, I'm seeing a lot of auction. Have you seen the auctions happening yet?
So frustrating, honestly.
Well, I mean...
They're great. If you understand, if the buyer is willing to participate, it's fine.
So why don't you guys unpack that for the people who don't know what you're talking about?
So there's some companies that are coming in and they're saying, hey, your house didn't sell. Let's just put it on an auction and let's get it sold that way. So drop the price significantly and then we'll start from there. The issue with that is that, I seem to remember 2020 through mid 2022, it was a huge seller's market, and all it was a bidding war. The only difference between a auction and a bidding war is what the highest price is. That's the only difference.
Okay.
And so I don't have a problem with them.
There's a way to do that too.
Yeah,
escalation addendums.
Yeah, all of those things, But I personally, I talk to my clients, and if they want me to share what this offer says, sale price, and what this one does, then I'll do it. If it's going to get multiple offers, I find that when buyers understand where they need to go, they can walk away a lot easier.
Yeah.
When they know, so 2020, I had to develop my own system for evaluating a property. And I won't go too far into the details. I still use it now. But basically it was like, you couldn't go further than 15 days in the rears to pull comps. You just couldn't. If you went further than that, you weren't even going to be close. So you had to live in the future. So what you had to do was, what I did was I called all the pendings and just said, hey, it looks like I developed a process to predict what I thought it was, what it's going to sell for, right? A ratio. And I'd say, okay, you've got one here for, $500,000. Did they undervalue it? or did they think they were right on? First, I'd determine that, and then I'd apply my value to it, and I'd text the agent, be like, hey, I'm trying to make an offer on another house. Did you guys accept that 570 or higher? And a lot of experienced agents would just say, now we're at 580. Boom. That is extremely valuable data because that house hasn't closed yet. But in 2020, it's probably a cash offer. It's probably going to close because the likelihood they would get another house under contract pretty low, and probably didn't want to go through the process. So then I would say, okay, via this data, we're at X% over list. So I'd go to my clients and be like, look, you can sign the appraisal addendum, right? Which for everybody out there, the appraisal addendum was a document that said that if it didn't appraise for the amount on the contract, the buyer would bring to closing the cash to bridge the gap. That was basically it. There's two more options, but that's the one everybody wanted, box 3. So when box one, yeah, sorry. So when I would come to my clients with this data, and I'd do it I'd have like a Google sheet, and like when I put data, because not all the agents are responding right away. So it could be 8 hours, 9, 10 hours before I had all this data queried. And then it would just show them, hey, this is what you need to offer. And because of the comps that are in that neighborhood, you can sign box 1. But if you go over this amount, the likelihood that you will bring cash to table is higher than if you stay at this amount.
But you can do a partial waiver to the number I'm going to tell you at.
Yeah. And so so that allowed them to say, okay, yeah, we'll do the 570. Box 1. And then if they won, they won. And we, I didn't have one that we won not appraise. So the system was fairly solid. But if they lost, and this is bringing it back in, when they lost, they walked away like, I'm not bringing cash to close. And
Right.
that's what everybody didn't want to do. So allowed them to walk away. So bringing it back in, talking the board, as I call it. I don't know if there's any spade players out there, but talking the board, as we used to call it, telling agents what
Table
the other
talk, yeah.
what the other offer is. It allows them to go back to their client. Now, we don't know what the terms are, and you can't just be reckless about it as a list agent. If you only think it's going to appraise for 500, the likelihood it's not a good idea to accept 510 or 520. You get to a point where you're like, okay, guys, say they're within $1,000 of each other. Then you're like, okay, both of you it's a stalemate on price. You got to come back with your best terms, and that's it. And that's what's going to take price out of it. Best terms is going to win it, And they even changed the rule. You used to be able to, I had clients putting in I was like, look, just put $5,000 in option money and say you don't want to return it, because they were cash heavy, or maybe not 5,000, but a little bit more, enough to pay for title or something. Mm-hmm. And then, and now, guys like Matt and I were like, closing deals because of this. And they changed the rules saying that basically you can't do that anymore.
The jig is up.
Yeah, what
I had a
happens.
$50,000 option
Are
fee.
you serious? Crazy. But you know what? And so that's the thing. That's where that to me is the agent that you want. Not somebody that's breaking the rules, but somebody that's pushing the boundaries. Like, how can we manipulate this contract to present the best offers and put you, the buyer, in the best position?
Well,
to
on the
win?
lending side, we were doing our full underwrites and, putting 0 days for finance contingency.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
You had to strip it down. It was like they either approved or they weren't.
Right. It kind of reminds me, though, when you're talking about the table talk and, with spades or whatever, I always think about, and I don't know what the right or wrong reason is because there's arguments for both sides, but the agent who calls me and we do 900 pre-approval letters because they're write it at exactly 415. Okay, now change it to 420. Okay, now we're going to go up a little bit, change it to 430. And I always think about it's we don't want them to know that we can afford more money. And I'm like, isn't that a disadvantage? There's a lot of things I can purchase in this world that I just don't want to buy or pay for.
Yeah.
So what sort of flex is it to put in an approval letter that says this is all we can afford?
If you're under asking, I get it.
What's that?
If you're under ask, I totally get that game.
Well, this is how I do it. So there's a program out there, and this is like a feather in my cap. So I will tell you what the program is, but it allows you to put text over text so that you can't see the text below the text. So if you sent me a pre-qual letter at 500 and my client, this is one of those questions I ask my client. It's their strategy. What do they think? How should they present themselves in this strategy? Because I have some that are like, they're like, I don't care. Show them we have that I'm approved for 800. 500 is all we're going to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Like, doesn't mean
I
I'm
don't
going to buy it, right?
And conversely, if you have a seller that bought in 2010 and they got 500,000 in equity, they have the room to go down, but do they have to? No. Same thing. So for me, it's like, what does my client want to do? How do they want to negotiate? But this program will allow you to put text over text, but you can tell. I purposely put different font in there so they can see that if it's a smart agent, we don't know what they're approved for, but they're approved for this. So brings in a little bit of, they probably can afford more, but what is it? I don't know. But they can afford their sale price. And how many, maybe Matt can speak to this as well. I think maybe 3 times when we've gone up in price, I've been asked for a new approval letter. And
that they don't even really
they don't even ask for another new
They usually
approval?
ask me.
Okay. And maybe that's where they get it.
If I'm the listing agent, I just call him direct.
Right.
Yeah, listing agents usually call me.
Hey,
They're
I'm
like,
about to
"Hey, I
counter
need
this
an
price.
updated approval letter."
You're more than welcome to share with them. But we're countering this number. Can they handle this number?
Yeah.
And if it comes from him and he says yes, or they'll lender, whoever it is.
And then the transaction coordinator calls me after everybody agrees, and I have to present the updated approval letter no matter what, just for compliance purposes. So yeah, they ask me, not you.
Well, so for the agents like this, I'll just say it because you still have to, because it can be used in other ways. It's dot loop. You just get a free account with dot loop, text over text. It's amazing. And so I don't use dot loop anymore other than for that. Just to, like my clients don't want to sign again.
I always liked Outloop.
It's owned by Zillow now, so
Is that why it's the devil? Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, that's the reason why I use it. Because if you use DocuSign or some of these others, you try to put text over text, you can see the text behind it, so there's no masking it. And so now that I've put that out there, they'll probably like
transaction desk. You can get away with it.
You can get away with it there too. But it's not. When I tell my clients, it's like, we're doing this, but we're not trying to say that you can afford 900 when you can only afford 8. We're not doing anything nefarious. We're just hiding something. That's it. And eventually, if they want to see it, they'll see it. They being the other side, the other party.
I dig
it. But it's very good for like if you change one thing, because I like to have what's called a clean contract. I don't want to if we change all the terms, I don't want to initial 5 other places. I just want it to be straight. So what I normally do is I send over the contract with the beginning terms and then what I call a 1-page detail sheet that has all the terms. If we put something in there other than a 0 and it affects that side, then it's listed, the paragraph, all of those things. And then if they counter or if they kick it back, whatever it is, then I change it, present it to my client, and then if we make a counter, then I change it again and we just work off that document. And the other agents seem to like it, whether it's buyer or seller, because they don't have to present. First, they check if they're smart. They check to make sure that I did it right, which again, I'm not doing anything nefarious. And so then they can say, yeah, this is good. This is exactly what's in the contract. And the sellers can just look at what's happening. They don't have to go from page 1 to page, paragraph 1 to paragraph 7 and paragraph 12.
And you get fast enough, you know where to look.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as agents, we do. But every 7 years, you're looking at this, and you're like, where was that last? You're not remembering.
Or with seller concessions, where the new commission is listed in section 12AB.
12AB, yeah.
What else do we need to know, gentlemen? We've been cooking for about an hour and a half.
Really? Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So I would say, right now, we said it earlier, time in the market, not timing the market. And if you're thinking about doing something, you probably should just start doing it. Buyers, I have listings where buyers come in and the agent called me, it's the number one. It's their number one. They want this house. And I'm like, great. Is an offer coming? Crickets. Nothing. 2 weeks later, it's still their number one. I'm like, what have you been doing for 2 weeks? And they're like, well, they've been looking at other homes. So a couple times it was their number one. Somebody else submitted an offer and their number one got taken. So people are starting to rev the engine. One of the things that we saw on X saw this post, when the Fed lowered rates the last time, more people searched for mortgage rates. What is the Fed rate? Anything about mortgage rates. That went up I don't want to say exponentially, but it was the most searches in that span of 4 days than it had been the whole year. So what that told me was there's a lot of people that are like, okay, let's start doing it. And when I talk to other agents and loan officers, they tell me the same thing. Not a lot of pen to paper, but a lot of people are gearing up. And I think that goes back to, perception. Trump, people,
It's that herd
people,
mentality, man. I mean,
yeah,
we talk about it
let's
on the
do it. Let's
podcast
go.
all the time. It's like no matter how much data or information or, knowledge, experience that any of us have, we don't know anything. All it takes is for the first buffalo to jump into the freaking river and they all just start following suit.
What
Have you seen the commercial on Geico when they talk about like what's the economy? Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
Okay, kid walks in the kitchen. There's the black Geico guy. There's the girl, the main one. Then there's a redhead who's kind of goofy, and then some other random Geico. And this kid walks up, and his mom's over here next to him. He goes, "What's the economy?" And then everyone's like, "Oh, just everything. So everything around us, right?" You seen this?
Yeah.
And then finally he looks at him and goes, "Oh, I'll just go look it up." But you can say 15 minutes.
I have seen that. Yes.
Just to me, that's what everyone's like doing right now. It's like, yeah, we know about the housing market. Yeah, we're looking at it or anything. No one really knows how to like explain it.
Yeah.
And they're like considering it, but like back to your point, like once you're in, you're gonna get it. But you're kind of sitting out on the sideline. You have no fucking clue what it's like right now.
One last thing I would say: if you're a seller and your agent's doing a open house, find out what that means. What does that mean? How many signs they put out? Do they put out signs? Are they doing social media? No, you don't have to like fire them because they're not putting out signs. Just what do you think? Find out what they're doing. And then if your buyers or your sellers going into open houses, the person there might not be the list agent. So they're trying to engage you about what you're trying to accomplish, they're trying to make you their client. So leverage that. Don't walk through the house and then walk out. Ask them what they think about the market, right? And interview them. And if you go to enough houses and you interview enough agents, you'll understand who the good agents are. Is it a good time to buy? What's the answer to it's a good time to buy? If they're like, yeah, it's a great time to buy. I mean, is it? The answer, what's the answer? Depends.
What's important to you?
Yeah, exactly. Depends on, or it could be, rates are lower, but the more of these open houses you go to and the more you engage with these agents, you'll get to understand who's a good agent and who's not and who's in between. Now, maybe the good agents aren't there, but you'll at least get talking points. Oh, I like that person. He was saying, he did that Trump impression, that was pretty good. Or what
Was pretty good.
Or whatever you gravitate towards. When I refer clients out, like that one I did in Dallas, I'm like, look, you got to be working with this person. So this is my opinion of them. This is who I think, number one, who I think will do the best job. But this is my opinion. You've got to interview them. You're going to be working closely with them. You've got to pick. And they rarely do they pick my number one, because my number one's usually based off data and that type of thing. But that person had I was afforded my interpretation first. And so if you're going to an open house, you get to do it yourself. You get to decide if you liked this person. If not, one of the lines I get, or one of the things I say to buyers that come in and say, look, I need you to put your email and your phone number down and your name, so the client, the seller knows that you were here. Yes, I'd love to contact you, but I don't want to spam people. So if you don't want me to contact you, I'd rather not waste time doing it, and you'll never hear from me again. And more often than not, they're like, no, call me or follow up with me. More often than not, that's what happens. But if you're just kind of, as an agent, if you're just kind of skirting around it, or they'll walk out, they won't do what they need to do. And they lost the opportunity to understand who you are as a person as well. So it works both ways.
I like that, though, because one of the things we talk a lot about is how rejection breeds obsession.
Yeah.
So sometimes just saying like, hey, you know what? If you don't want to talk to me, I don't want to talk to you. They're like, no, wait, no. What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it takes time to spam people. You got to set them up.
For sure.
You got to get them on the drip campaign, call them, all those things takes time. So I'd rather call people that are interested, that we had a rapport with, than somebody that didn't.
There was an announcement this morning because you were mentioning it. So they are only anticipating one Fed funds rate cut this year.
Well, we didn't
They
talk
dropped
about
it down to one.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the 10-year T-note.
Yeah.
Which is driving the rate. And so...
I mean, that's your main driver of rates.
That's it. And so I heard something on American Public Media, and they were saying that one of the reasons why the 10-year note is staying up is because there's so much uncertainty in the American economy right now. And so it's better for them to pull their money and put it in like a 6-month note or 2-year. And then once they know what's going to happen, then put it in. Because if they put all this money in a 10-year, then they could be losing money by not having put it into other bonds, or it just turned out not to be so great. So they're waiting a little bit. So again, their waiting is more stability in the interest rate arena.
Closer to a guarantee.
Right, exactly.
Bring it all back.
Right, exactly. Yes.
It's a pleasure, man. Appreciate
awesome.
you coming through. And, I tell everybody, this isn't a one-time thing. You know,
man,
our
I'd love to
first
come back.
one is we get information about you and whatnot, but the episodes that clip out really, really well are the ones that I do with people when they come back like 2, 3, 4 times and stuff. So
I'd
I hope
love
to
to.
have you come through. And I know when you walked in, you smelled the barbecue. So this brisket is going to be on for like 17 hours. So we're going to have it ready tomorrow. And if you find yourself, I mean, if you're over in Easton Park, then you're real close, man. Make this your lunch spot on Fridays.
I might be here Friday. I mean, Matt knows this. I'm doing a 86-hour water
that's right.
cleanse.
When does that end?
Today's my second day.
Oh, boy.
So I got a little ways to go. But it's not, it's more of a mental discipline for those of you out there that are wondering why I'm doing it. You reach a plateau in your life, whether it's physically or mentally, and you got to kind of challenge yourself a little bit. So, last night I was sitting at Wingstop getting my daughter some wings, and some boneless wings. It was rough. Let me tell you, it was rough. And then she didn't eat all of them. I'm like, man.
Are you chugging water?
I generally drink a lot of water anyway, but on this one you can do what you can do.
Yeah,
I can
give
do
us the
whatever
rules.
I want. Generally, it's water the first 24 hours, then and electrolytes, so no calorie electrolyte, and then you can do bone broth. So today I'll have my first 2 helpings of bone broth twice a day, and then it's just like that the rest of the way. I had said earlier that I was trying to give up coffee, not here, but on another show, and I'm still doing that. I was looking it up, and people were like, "Well, just take these caffeine pills." And I was like,
What's the
"Fantastic."
point?
Well, coffee in and of itself, not just the caffeine, will raise your blood pressure and do other things to you, right? And it's caffeine is addictive, so I'm just using the pills to kind of wean me off of it. It's like methadone or something like that.
Gotcha.
Let's go the Rogie route.
Right?
Normally when I would do it, I would drink Mountain Dews. So I never drank. My wife's from Seattle, so when we got together, she's like, "You never had coffee?" I'm like, "No, I just have a Mountain Dew in the morning, and if I'm hungover, I have 2 of them, and if I'm not, I might have half of one. It just depends." I don't drink anymore, so I don't have to worry about that. But and so now when I kick coffee, I'm like, all right, I'll just have these little mini Mountain Dews. I'll just drink one and then slowly taper off during the week, and that's it. And it's really just when you drink a lot of coffee, you get headaches. A lot of caffeine, you'll get headaches. It's like a what do you call it? When you're trying to kick the drug.
Withdraw?
Withdraw. That's it. You're withdrawing. Yeah. So, but this I'll probably lose. I was at 175 when I started. I'll probably go into the 160s somewhere.
Oh, wow.
And then, but apparently it helps cell growth, a lot of those things. Cell deflammation, right? So a lot of people who are having heart disease and stuff like that, one of the issues is inflammation. And not inflammation like, I twisted my ankle, it swelled up, but your cells are inflamed a little bit. And there's a lot of different ways that apparently you can solve that issue, but getting rid of caffeine is one of them, and going on a fast is another. It can help with that. So,
Well, I'll make sure that when I eat brisket tomorrow,
you're thinking about me?
I'll drink a Red Bull too.
Yes. Yeah.
And then have some nicotine afterwards, too.
Right?
There you go. Wash it down.
Follow it up with some
smoke.
whiskey.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I really enjoyed it. I'd love
Likewise.
to come back.
Yeah. Anytime, man.
We didn't talk about all the things that I wanted to talk about, so which is fine.
No, we
Gotta
got
save
plenty
some for
more
later.
episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the link.
Yeah.
You
for
book
sure.
anytime, man. I'll make it happen.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you guys later.